Welcome to HortTube. My name is Putnam. This is the Sunday garden question and answer video that I do on Sundays. If you have gardening questions, you can ask them down below this video, and I pick from those each week to answer. There'll be another question and answer video next week, and then the week after that, we'll probably do another subscriber Sunday video. And you guys can send in photos from things in your landscape that you're proud of. I would imagine that and it's that time of year when everything is really flushing out and looking pretty lush. And I think this space is, and you guys will have seen a tour video yesterday before you see this. And all I'm doing on those weekly tour videos is just kind of bouncing around and showing you some different things each week, so it doesn't become, hopefully it doesn't become monotonous. There's a lot of things I skipped, and I actually wrote on a list of things I had missed, kind of this week. So next week I would show some different interesting things I haven't shown this season so far. Holly's laying right down below me, but I don't think you'll be able to see her right here. She's trying to put her head up a bit, but she is out here, as she is most weeks. What else went up this week? The Weymouth Center landscape installation, that went in on Tuesday. I have 2 more landscape installations that I'm doing in the next couple of days. Plants are already over there, holes are dug, so those videos will come soon. I haven't put up Jeremy's last video with the stone wall, and I finished that video's been shot, so I need to get it edited and lots of other things. I think I put up 1 more of Ram's videos this past week. I put up a pruning video this past week, if you haven't seen that. And that pruning video, there's gonna be 2 additional pruning videos coming at least to get all of these things pruned. And I'm just kind of going plant to plant and explaining why I'm pruning it, how it's pruned, that kind of thing. So anyway, let's get to some questions, some gardening questions from last week. Somebody asked me my go-to ornamental grasses for the south. If they get about 6 to 8 hours of direct sun, which is, I guess, is full sun. We're lucky here. We do have a lot of great native grasses. There's bees. Bees are here. I think one just went right over my shoulder there. The bees are showing up in the afternoons more and more and more as everything's coming to life here. We're lucky here in our part of the U.S., in the Southeast and in the Midwest. We have a lot of great native grasses. And so, things like mully grass and little blue stem and switchgrass and big blue stem, love grass. Did I say love grass already? We have a lot of great native grasses, so I would look that up. And then, of course, there's things like miscanthus and other types of grasses that work well. And there's actually some native fescues, ornamental fescues as well. So a lot of great native grasses if you want to go. And a lot of those grasses are where some of our beneficial insects overwinter. They use those, things like blue stem to overwinter. So they're important for the environment as well. So if you're interested in having, grasses blended into your cottage garden and that kind of thing, again, we're lucky we have a lot of great natives. So you can look those up. Let's see. Somebody said I should put the evergreen, to make an evergreen playlist on the channel. And just to point this out, if you go to the main page on my channel for HortTube with Putnam, I do have all the videos in playlist. Like there's a playlist called New House that just shows everything from the construction of that building right there, from when that building was me standing in front of it in the first video and it was just wood before it was painted or anything, before it was finished. And there were literally no plants around it to this thing that's behind me now. Every video's in a playlist called New House. And then there's videos for, by the zone you live in for plants, all the plants I've ever done that are hardy up to zone 6 or 7 or 8. Variegated plants or gold foliage plants, purple foliage plants, flowering shrubs. There's playlists for all kinds of things, but you can go and look at those playlists. And there is a playlist for evergreen plants, meaning plants that don't lose their leaves in the winter. I have probably put up videos with evergreen plants in them that I forgot to put in the playlist, but that playlist probably does have a lot of videos in it for the ones I have remembered. But there is an evergreen playlist. So you're up, right? Okay, all right. Somebody asked me how much watering I was doing every day. They're in Charlotte and it's dry in Charlotte. Wondered if I'm watering a lot. It's dry here as well. We had a thunderstorm 2 nights ago. There's a lot of thunder, a lot of lightning, some damage around the area. And I wake up and the ground looks like we had gotten some rain, and I moved the soil, and about you know, half-inch down. It was bone dry. It's barely rained at all, but we had a lot of, you know, had a lot of wind and lightning and that kind of thing. I'm watering these newly planted annuals probably, you know, once every third day really, really well. The older shrubs that have been in the ground for like 2 years now, all of these things behind me back here, a lot of them have been in like 2 years. Not at all. Things that have been planted this spring though, some of the perennials and shade perennials, sun perennials you guys have seen me plant, those are getting watered at least a couple times a week right now, which is more watering. And the pots, of course, when the pots need them, sometimes that's daily. It's been over 90 degrees the last 3 days. But I do less than you would think. I try to limit it as much as possible. I look at the plants, like I'm shooting this at 2:30 on Saturday. You'll be seeing this on Sunday, and the shade is moved over the back lawn right here at this point. So if I see something back here that's stressed around 1 or 1:30, I know that shade's coming over it pretty soon. And so, you know, I base it on that. You know, once things go into a little bit of dappled light back there, just bright light, they pop right back up. So I'm pretty hard on these things as much as possible, because I want them to be, if I'm babying them right now, I'm in trouble all summer long. And so, you know, I'd like to, I don't mind if they're pouting a little bit in the early afternoon, if I know that area is going to go into the shade. If they're pouting a little bit in the early afternoon, and I know that's a place that stays sunny until late in the day, I water those kinds of things. But I try to as little as possible, but now I'm watering more right now than I have in the last 2 Mays, for sure. Somebody's landscape got sprayed with a fungicide, and a bunch of the plants in the landscape are damaged. I don't know, okay, so I don't know what the person was spraying a fungicide for, or I guess they had somebody spray it with a fungicide, and I don't know what they were spraying a fungicide for. I don't know why a person would spray their entire landscape with a fungicide. You know, there's no, I don't understand the purpose of it. Let's put that aside for a minute, and then say, well, either it was too much fungicide, possibly, or maybe there was an oil, like a dormant oil was in the fungicide so that it would stick better. And sometimes when it's super hot outside, dormant oils can cause a problem. That's why they're called dormant oils. We typically spray them when it's during the winter time, and not when it's hot in the summertime. Or alternatively, what actually comes to mind is there was Roundup in that sprayer at some point, and then they mixed the fungicide into that sprayer and then sprayed everything, and there was a small amount of glyphosate or Roundup. It doesn't need to be Roundup specific, but glyphosate is the chemical that was, you know, in Roundup. I wonder if there was glyphosate residue in the sprayer, because that's possible. See, back when I had my landscape company and we did some spraying on, you know, maintenance jobs, we had, you know, our Roundup sprayer was separate from any other insecticide, fungicide sprayers. So you had to keep your herbicides. You know, we have 3 sprayers. We'd have an herbicide sprayer where you'd spray herbicides on your lawn, and then a Roundup sprayer, and then a sprayer that would be fungicides or insecticides. Never put them together because I wasn't trusting that I could wash the sprayer out well enough. I don't know that that's it, but my feeling is, in order to damage your landscape with a fungicide, you would have either had to mix way too much at one time, or had, like I say, put some dormant oil in it or some oil in it to make it stick better. And that could have caused some damage, or there was a residue in your sprayer that caused that damage. And I don't know where that goes from there. If you're seeing minor damage on shrubs and things, I've seen that sort of Roundup damage before. It doesn't kill them, but it makes the new growth kind of stunted and weird for a little while. Typically it'll grow out of it, but I'm just throwing that out because I don't know why a fungicide would have damaged the plants in your landscape. Or why anybody would need to spray their entire landscape with a fungicide. Okay, somebody has a lilac and a viburnum, and it's been bent down from snow. If you watched the pruning video I did earlier in the week, the loropetalum over here, I had to say loropetalum every week, right? Just simply cutting the ends off some of the branches and reducing the weight sprung that thing right back up. If you want to go back and watch that video earlier this week, there's nothing to watch really. I literally cut a limb and it popped back up. So taking the weight off the ends of some of those branches will help bring it back up. I don't know if it's a lilac that's already bloomed or not bloomed, but You might want to wait for it to bloom if it hasn't, but if it has already, I just go ahead and take some of the lengths of the branches off, and that will reduce the weight on them and pull them back up into place. If that doesn't work, I did a video rescuing a plant last year. I had a sunshine ligustrum open up from similar weather event, and I just brought it back up together and did use some zip ties to hold it up for a while until it was fine, and now it's been cut out. So if you want to go back and watch either one of those videos, cut the branches or pull it back up and use a zip tie temporarily to hold them up while I think you're going to need to cut them a bit no matter what. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I had told them to leave a camellia in place that was that had some black leaves on it earlier in the year. It's grown out of that, but now it has camellia scale. They're telling me there's insects under the leaf. If you flip over a leaf on a camellia, camellia is in the tea family. Camellia sinensis is tea. If you like tea, you're very familiar with that plant. All camellias are susceptible to what we call tea scale, which is a scale insect that attaches itself to the back of the leaves. And I have a lot of camellias out here, and I can probably find, it wouldn't surprise me if I spent some time looking for it, I could find some tea scale. It doesn't surprise me that your already stressed camellia, which is now trying to turn its life around, get some new growth on it, get started, would be more susceptible to tea scale. So I would leave it be. I think if you're mulching this area and you're just lightly fertilizing and you're just generally taking care of it, you're watering it when it's dry, I think it'll be able to manage on its own without any problems. I mentioned dormant oil earlier. You can use a dormant oil in the wintertime and spray up under those leaves if you want to drown that scale. That's actually the best time of year to do it and it's just an oil that you'd be spraying. Don't do a lot of spraying, but in the question was, do I think the camellia will be able to fight that off? Yes. Will it continue to have a little bit of scale on it? Yes. I just don't worry about it. I mean, I see camellias all over the world with scale on them, and then they're still flowering and they're still fine. If it's excessive for you, it's likely, like I say, it was already stressed. And I was talking about in last week's video, stressed plants are where we find our biggest insect and disease problems. So, but I think if it's growing and you're now taking care of it and not letting additional stresses happen to it, it's going to be fine anyway. Let's see. Somebody had a Kwanzan cherry that was killed by groundhogs, or they thought was killed by groundhogs, and now it's coming up from the stump. Just wanted to know if it can turn into a tree. Yeah, you can probably just regrow it as long as it wasn't a grafted tree. Somebody asked me if this was a sweet potato vine on a steak the other day. This redbud, this Golden Falls redbud behind me is a grafted tree. I think maybe right there you can see my Tokyo Tower Kyananthus, my upright Chinese fringe tree. It's also a grafted tree. Oh, even the red or the purple Japanese maple behind me, all grafted trees, meaning that they're actually grafted onto a different rootstock. Okay, so this redbud is grafted onto probably likely just a regular redbud rootstock, because that rootstock is hardier. Some Kwanzan cherries are grafted, some aren't. All weeping cherries are grafted. All weeping cherries are grafted. Some Kwanzans are just rooted cuttings, some are grafted. If it was a grafted variety, the only reason I'm pointing this out, and it's coming up from the stump, it's actually a different tree. But if it wasn't a grafted tree, then it's the Kwanzan cherry coming up. And you could just pick one of those pieces that's coming up, cut everything else away, and start to train it back as a tree if you wanted to. So yes, you can make another tree out of that. Somebody asked me, just in general, how they would know if their soil conditions are improving, meaning beneficial bacteria and beneficial microbes. Or, I think that comes down to, I showed the refractometer last week. That's how I'm measuring it. I'm measuring it in, can I increase the sugar content in the leaves of my plants? And so that's what that tool is for me. But in general, if you're seeing slow, steady growth on everything, and most of the foliage seems clean and things seem happy, happier, over time, then I think that's the way you measure it. You can, I mean, you guys can see when I'm digging holes out here now. I mean, I went from digging clay pots back here in 24 months to, you know, I can just take the shovel and stick it right in the ground, you know, the first 5 or 6 inches without any problem. So you can see the soil itself has improved, and the conditions, you know, all the plants are in great shape. I have very few issues out here. I had some initial chewing insects here or there, and, you know, birds are helping me. The plants being in good shape helps me. But I think as long as you're doing the thing, you know, doing just basic things, which is really just keeping things weeded, watering when things are really dry, you know, but don't overdo the water. They don't need to be babied, you know, as much as people think they do. And then keeping the ground covered, and I say that so much, but feeding the ground organic material. As much as it wants it, feed it organic material. I've got a lot of weeds along this edge in my annuals and perennials because I've done so much work in here over the last few weeks. So I've got to get some more mulch in here. I mean, control my weeds, and, you know, get that stuff breaking down and get it feeding these new perennials and things that have gone in behind this row of annuals that you guys saw in that sun planting video. You know, and the other thing is, if you have, I was thinking about this after I shot that video last week about the black mulch. One other negative, I think, with the black mulch is this mulch, all these mulches, they go down dark, but they bleach. The non-dyed barks bleach out in time. And I was thinking about if the mulch stayed black, one of the benefits of mulch is it keeps your roots warm in the wintertime, or slightly warmer in the wintertime, insulating them from cold. It also does the same thing in the summer. It insulates them from the sun directly hitting shallow roots, because a lot of these plants are very shallow rooted, okay? So that mulch layer is helping insulate from that sun. Well, if the mulch is black, I was thinking, well, you know, I would like to do an experiment with that at some point in a full sun planting and see if there's a difference between, you know, my bleached out hardwood mulch, because the sun is bleaching it, literally it's bleaching it, or black mulch, if I would see a difference in the growth of something, or, you know, will it damage the roots? Does that mulch get so hot that it damages the roots? So I had that question. But as long as you're keeping things, you know, putting organic material down and letting the soil eat it, you're improving things. Let's see. Somebody asked if I do propagation. This is a funny thing. I put up the pruning video, and everybody's like, "Those are cuttings. You got to root those cuttings." And I finally said to somebody on one of those comments, was like, "I rooted cuttings for a living for 20 years. I've rooted millions of cuttings. It's your turn to root cuttings if you guys want to root cuttings." And I will root some things this year over here in my propagation house. But as I'm cutting this loropetalum down, I do not want 500 cuttings of those loropetalums. You know, at this point in my life, it's something I did in the past. Every plant to me was a commodity, you know, for 20 some years. You know, I looked at it and went, how many cuttings could I get off of it? Now I look like I just want that limb off of it. I'm not looking at it in that way. So I agree. You can, all of these things I was cutting on in those pruning videos, you can absolutely make new plants with them. I'm not. I've done millions of rooted cuttings, literally millions of rooted cuttings. I'm done with that. But somebody asked about doing propagation videos. I have propagation series. It's a whole nother playlist on the channel. You know, a lot of the basis of this channel has been leading up to this year for me, was showing folks how to do this as inexpensively as possible. Now I go out and buy, you know, expensive trees. And put them in here, but there's a lot of things in here that were either given to me, they were divisions from other people, they were done from seed by me, they were propagated by me. I mean, the container planting video went up this week. In the container planting video, there are plants that I rooted here in the propagation series 2 years ago that went in. I've got, here, let me grab. Okay. Here's a Camellia, Camellia japonica that I rooted in that series here 2 years ago, and I showed how to root these camellias. This is a one of a kind camellia right here. I've got 2 additional ones, but it's a new I'm confident it's a new pink variety, but I do root things, and I try to save people money. I mean, that's a lot of what's going on with this channel, is that you can do a lot. You can still do a lot with a little. You know, with inflation and gas prices and food prices and everything else, you can still do a lot. And with wood chips and, you know, doing your own compost, and, you know, which I'll show more of in the future. But again, that's a big basis in this channel, is, you know, is wanting to show people that you don't have to break the bank as much as you think you do. And there's a whole series of propagation videos, and if you go to the playlist on my main channel, you can go to those. They're long-winded. Some of them are like 8. You can't teach someone propagation in 15 minutes. So you're going to have to be, you know, patiently watch through like 8 videos in a series. Very first video I put on this channel was my propagation house at my nursery. If you want to go back and look at what my propagation house looked like in my nursery, it's the very first video on this channel. Okay, that was a lot of words. Yes, lots of propagation videos. Let me see. Somebody has, somebody asked if they can still move a hosta. Yeah, it probably will get a little stressed, and you need to move it quick, and I'd probably move it in the evening. So if you've got one that you want to pop out of the ground and move it to another spot, or pop it out of the ground and divide it, just do it in the evening, get it back into the ground. Expect it to not be its best this year. Planting it this close to, or transplanting one this close to summer. Planting it out of a container into the ground wouldn't be a problem at all, but potentially you're going to do a little root damage to it, which could set it back some. But I do it in the evening and move it. Hosta are tough as nails. If it declines a bit on you, it doesn't matter. It'll come right back out. Let's see. Somebody bought 4-inch shrubs, 4-inch shrubs in 4-inch pots. So very small potted shrubs, and wanted to know whether or not they should put them in the ground or pot them into larger containers and then plant them later. If you're down here in the south, fall's a great time to plant, and you could put them into slightly larger pots and grow them out a little more until they're a little bigger, so that you're more comfortable with it. But if you're in an area that's a little colder and fall is not your best planting time, I'd probably get them in the ground right now. So either way, I would put them in the ground. But I realize some people are going to look at that little tiny plant and think, well, will it survive? It will survive. And these were tough things. These were, let's see, it was clethra, sweet spire, Rosa Sharon. I mean, Rosa Sharon's like a weed. It is a weed. I can go in the woods right here and find it. It is truly a weed. Yeah, you won't have, you shouldn't have any problem with those. I mean, the clethra and the sweet spire are natives. So, you know, you're not going to have any problem putting those in the ground. But if it makes you nervous, and I'll say this again and again, if it's something that makes you nervous, then take the step of putting it in a slightly larger pot and getting a little size on it, and then put it in the ground later. If that's what makes you more comfortable, do it that way. There's no point in being stressed about it. Somebody wanted to know what the flower in the thumbnail was last week. That was alliums, the almost finished flowering back here behind me. Flowering allium. Let's see. Somebody has Bermuda grass in their yard, and they have Bermuda grass on their neighbor's landscape, and they want to convert theirs to Zoysia. Is there any way to do so? The only way would be to obviously kill all of your Bermuda grass, and then you need to put a bed between your neighbor's house and your house, the entire length. If that Bermuda grass is in contact with your Zoysia grass, that Bermuda grass will grow into it. There's nothing you can do about it. I lost an entire Zoysia lawn at the very first place I ever worked in this business was a garden center in North Raleigh called Rake and Hoe Garden Center. Summer Classics Furniture is in that building there now if you're in Raleigh, up at Lynn and Six Forks. We had a Zoysia lawn where we sold patio furniture, and we had, you know, a lawn area and patio areas where we could display the furniture. A little bit of Bermuda grass got into that Zoysia, and over a course of, you know, 18 months or so, it became 80% Bermuda. So no, you have to separate it somehow for sure. If you get any Bermuda in it, the Bermuda is just faster growing, and it's just as mower tolerant. It's just as tolerant of everything. So you have to put a bed between you and them, and kill all of yours. Make sure yours is all dead. Let's see. Somebody asked, why do I replace some of the soil in my containers? Couldn't I just fertilize? Yeah, that would be helpful, but one of the things we're missing in these containers is what soil actually has, or what, you know, when we're talking about clay or sand, we're talking about rock dust. I mean, this is ground down rock, and it has all the minerals in it. When we start container planting, we're trying to use materials that are lighter so that we can carry the pots around and we don't drown our plants, so it drains better. Those materials don't have all of those minerals and metals and things that your plants need, and so it gets tired after a while. And so that's why I replaced some of the compost in them. You can actually buy rock dust and use it in your containers. You can probably order it on Amazon in a bag and use a small amount of it in your containers to, you know, kind of simulate you know, the rock that's in the soil. But that's the reason I grow my vegetables in the soil and not in raised beds. Two reasons. Two reasons. Let me say a second reason. The second reason is because I feel like having improved the soil, even if it's a hard job to get your vegetable garden started in the soil, and it takes a couple seasons to improve it, you know, worst case scenario, and you're growing your own food, ain't nobody going to sell you the material to keep your raised beds full. so I want my soil, you know, I want soil prepped. You know, I'm prepping for. Jim is 90% gardener and 10% prepping for the apocalypse here. You know what I mean? So I can grow my own food and collect my own seed and that kind of thing. Not thinking that's going to happen, but I am. You know, that's the reason I grow in the ground. And the second reason is because there's minerals, you know, in that soil that I can't replicate, are much harder to replicate in a raised bed, or peat moss, or coconut coir, or compost, or, you know, any of those, anything really that doesn't have that rock dust in it. Somebody bought an oak leaf hydrangea, and it is not labeled anything other than oak leaf hydrangea. Wanted to know if they could figure out what cultivar it is. Somebody answered down below that it might just be the straight species, Hydrangea quercifolia, which is, you know, a native to the southeast. That would just be the native species. And it's within the realm of possibility, but I've actually I don't know that I've ever seen anyone root the straight species. It's probably just one of the older named cultivars like Alice, or, you know, there's a bunch of them. I don't know why, you know, they rooted them and didn't bother, you know, putting the name on it, but I don't think there's any way you could figure it out. So for you, it's a straight species oak leaf hydrangea, and it probably will get big, you know. And I would think that if it was a dwarf variety, that they would have labeled it a dwarf variety. Otherwise, you know, it's good. You can plan on getting 10 plus feet if you let it, but you can keep them smaller. So a couple more. Somebody asked about plants that are having ongoing problems, like they can't get rid of the problems. I think it was this particular case. It was about agara that has aphids constantly. They spray them off. They keep coming back. That's a plant. I mean, you have two possibilities. One, you can move it, see if in a different spot where it's getting more air movement, or it's getting more or less sun, or maybe it's less crowded, maybe it's more crowded, I don't know. Move it to a different spot, try that temporarily. You can dig it up, move it, cut it down about a third, you know, leave about 2/3 of the plant, see if it flushes back out and it's happier and healthier in its new location. If it's not, throw it away, and don't let it stress you anymore. Find something else for that space. You know, sometimes that's part of my answering these questions. It's not answers people want. But, you know, if we're talking about, am I going to spray an insecticide on a agara that is, you know, in my yard for pollinators, you know, and I'm going to hurt the pollinators by doing that? None of that makes any sense to me. So either throw it away, or my first attempt, I would move it. I would assume that it's something about that soil or the sun or something. Move it first. If that doesn't work, adios. No more stress. It never happened. Somebody asked about composting over ground covers. So they got ground cover plants and they want to get some sort of mulch down in them. I have taken a snow shovel or flat seed shovel and slung compost out over things like that, and then taken a push broom and push broomed over the top of it to get that down in the bottom. I don't want a bunch of compost dropping down into my into my ground covers. But if you just putting a dusting over the top of them and then raking it in, it works actually pretty effectively. You can, like I say, you can throw it out with a shovel, or you can put on a glove and just throw it out by hand over the top of it if it's a material that can be thrown like that, and just rake it down in there. And it probably would be beneficial for your ground covers, unless you're putting like an inch, burying them in it. I wouldn't do that, but you can do it that way. And then the last one I'll answer is always get lots of questions about slime molds, which are slime molds are actually cool. I have one around the corner over here right now. They're not animals, they're not plants, they're not fungus, they're not bacteria, they're their own thing. Slime molds happen in moist areas, typically on mulch, sometimes in grass. You'll see slime molds in grass as well. And it can do a little damage to your grass because it can actually cover up the blades of grass and turn it a bit yellow if that's damage. It's not that big of a deal. I never worry about them. Every time I see one, I go, wow, that's cool. There's like 700 species or something of slime molds. I actually think they're kind of cool. They are potentially eating destructive bacteria. I talked about beneficial bacteria last week. In wetter areas in your landscape, we can have bad bacteria. Those slime molds feed on that. I think they're in the landscape doing you a favor, and they're breaking stuff down. I understand they're unattractive, but you can't do anything about them. If you have mulched, if you have a landscape and it stays moist at times, you're going to see slime molds. To me, they're actually cool. I look at them as part of my landscape and not as some sort of creepy thing. They don't hurt you in any way, shape, or form. They're here doing a job, and I let them do the job. And in wonder, really. I mean, I think they're one of the coolest things on the planet. And the fact that it's its own life form, single cell thing that's been around much longer, and probably after us and before us, doing a job here. So thank you guys very much for watching and following along and asking questions. Ask gardening questions down below, and I'll be back next week with another Q&A. Thanks for watching.